Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome
Hello,
to
hello.
a spooky episode of the Aurora Public Library. I'm Elizabeth,
I'm Brandon.
and we're here to talk about fabulous spooky season now. It is time for the spooks. So
Fabulous
Lovecraft,
spooky season.
fabulous spooky season, the best spooky season, the
That's
spookiest of
right.
seasons. We're all ready to go. So admittedly, Halloween's not this weekend, but Lovecraft Country is big and doing cool horror things, and the last episode is this weekend. And then last weekend was Bly Manor, and that is bringing back spooks. So spooks are very much in style, and we wanted to talk about it. So,
Yes, absolutely.
neat things. All right. So, experiences with horror. Where are you at on the grand scale of horror things, Brandon?
So definitely, I experienced horror from a young age. My mother introduced me to Stephen King novels at a far too young of an age, and they loved tormenting me with things like from Child's Play and stuff like that. I would probably actually argue that I might have been introduced at too young of an age, but I did develop a fondness for certain horror I watched as a kid. Others I didn't like. Um, but I mean, I've been involved with it from a young age. But as I've gotten older and the material has changed, what's come out, and my ability to search for other material has expanded, I have found there's actually elements of horror that I am quite fond of, and that when it does what I think makes good horror well, it really speaks to me and affects me in a more enjoyable, scary kind of way, rather than a this is very unpleasant, scary kind of way. Um, so that's largely been my experience. And then when you want to talk, like that's horror, but then like spooky, my family's always supported Halloween. I grew up in a town where Halloween was very popular, all the costumes and all that. So it's just kind of always been part of my personal culture growing up.
So this is the story of the horror fan and the horror fraidy cat because I had a different experience with horror. I did not watch a lot as a kid. It's very fun. I think the first horror movie I saw as a kid was The Exorcist, and I was absolutely terrified out of my skull. I That was
That's a hard one to
terrifying.
see first. Whew.
That was deeply not cool, and I must have been in middle school or junior high, and I was just like not cool with it. So I still have friends who make fun of me for the first time I saw it, and how I slowly accumulated all of the cushions on one couch and then went and started accumulating the cushions on the other couch. And by the time we were in It Part 2, it was just sort of this little mound of pillows and cushions with like me underneath it, just peeking at the screen. So the biggest horror fraidy cat. But I do like horror now, which is neat. Um, so that is definitely, it changes up things, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
I think being a fraidy cat of horror is interesting because I always liked horror books. I just didn't like horror movies. And now as an adult, I am more okay with horror movies as a general concept. So,
I do want to clarify one quick thing though. Even though
absolutely.
I have a long-term experience with it, I do not want everyone to think this is Big Tough Brandon. Um, I most certainly have hidden behind my bags of popcorn. I like having my pillow and watching a horror movie at home. But I actually have more to get into that, and we'll get into that later when we get to the relevant subjects. But you're not the only fraidy cat, I assure you.
Well, thank you. That is very comforting. I am very glad to know it. All right. So, what are your favorite things about horror? Because I think we both said that we like some kinds of horror, but not all varieties of horror. Like, I'm not a fan of gory horror. I think so much, but not here for the Jason serial killer slash slash.
No, I've never been a fan of that. And as a kid, I didn't like it. I was just scared of it as a kid. But even then, like I just recognized as I was watching the movies, like what was happening in between the slash slash, I just wasn't interested in because most of those characters in those films were never made to be likable. They were just fodder for the killer to kill, and they didn't seem like real humans. Even as a kid, I think I was recognizing that. Um, so like a lot of that kind of horror, I didn't enjoy as much as a kid, or it didn't like grip me. I think my first I would say like what I really enjoy about horror is the psychological. And the psychological can be hurt and damaged by supernatural and all these other things. But I like it when it's not just because something was really gory or something jumped out and made a loud noise. I like it when the movie shuts off, I'm thinking about what it was telling me about its themes and its messages. Um, or maybe just the grave nature of what was happening because it was that severe that it sticks with me. And like I'm up in bed at night, not because I'm worried there's something under my bed, but because the dread of what the story told me stuck with me. That's what I like about horror. How about you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I think it's the same for me actually. The psychological aspects of horror are really fascinating. I remember when I was a kid, one of my favorite horror books involved a haunted carnival that involved both the protagonist's worst beliefs about themselves and their greatest fears. And
Mm-hmm.
so that for a long time I didn't associate that as actually horror. I don't know what genre I thought it was. Like this isn't, if it's not horror, what is it? We're not talking fantasy or sci-fi. But I thought horror had to mean, okay, it's got to have a ghost, it's got to have a vampire, it's got to have like, or it's
Right.
got to have blood, or it's got to have a murder. I honestly thought if there wasn't a murder, it didn't count as horror, or if there wasn't like a demon or something. But the most interesting part of horror for me isn't the supernatural elements, although those are fun, and I will defend delightfully creepy and stupid vampires. The most interesting part of horror is definitely like what happens to the people within horror. Like, it's more interesting what it says about real people.
That's exactly it, and that's, I mean, a big reason why I've always been, just to not to go on a tangent, but just real quickly, why I've always appreciated Steven Spielberg's approach to films, and it's not horror, but placing normal, ordinary people in extraordinary situations. The minute you have a character that seems to be this invincible archetype, this very heroic, I just lose interest. That's why a horror film that I really enjoyed when I was younger was Alien, the original Alien. The
Oof.
cast, the people on that ship were down to earth, real people, just average working class individuals. And like as these things are happening to them and they're going through these terrifying experience, it was like, oh wow, that's how a real person might react to this, and that just made it all the more real for me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I couldn't have dealt with a chest burster as a kid. I could not have done that. That's right. Alien is the chest burster, right?
Yeah, and you know what happened in that? You know that scene? They didn't. The cast members didn't know that was going to happen, right?
What? I didn't know that. They didn't know?
Yeah, yeah. You can look it up on the behind the scenes commentary and stuff. But yeah, none of the people, besides the guy laying down on the table, but none of the people who reacted, the other cast members, they didn't know that chestburster was going to happen. All they were told was something's going to happen and just react how you want to react. And then with the little they used practical effects, it was like a prosthetic or something. It happened, and the reaction you're seeing is the first take and a genuine reaction to them seeing this thing pop out and
Oh my gosh, that's fantastic. I want to look at that again now that I know that. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
I say again, like I didn't just like quietly like desperately need to get popcorn in the other room the original time I watched that scene, which is exactly what happened. I was just like, I need to, don't pause it for me. No, don't worry, I'll be back. Um, I think as a kid though, like chest bursters would have been outside my area of comfort. It's weird how the things that scare you as a kid are totally different than
Yeah.
the things that scare you as an adult. Like as a kid, the thing that scared me most, I think, but like the first time I really remember being scared of something, it was a wrinkle in my grandparents' carpet.
Now explain a wrinkle in the carpet.
A wrinkle in
How
my
do you mean?
grandparents' carpet. Yeah, no, for real. This was actually the scariest thing, and it wasn't just me. It was my cousins too. It was not just me because my grandparents' back bedroom had very strange lighting in comparison to the rest of the house. It was the area of the house most likely to be shaded first as the sun began to go down. And there was a wrinkle directly in the middle of the carpet back there, and with where the bedroom was positioned, it was more difficult to hear sound from the rest of the house when you were in that room. So we thought there was a monster in that room, and stepping on the wrinkle in the carpet would summon it.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I know it was a very, very detailed story. So initially we were just like, that's kind of a creepy wrinkle, we're going to stomp on it. But the longer you stayed back there interacting with the wrinkle, like the more disoriented and creeped out you would get until eventually, like you have these kids barreling around the corner into the kitchen screaming while, their grandmother just very confusedly looks up from soup and is like, why are you running away from my bedroom screaming? What on earth? So yes, that was the first experience with horror, was the terrifying wrinkle in the carpet. How about you? Did you have like weird things like that at all? Terrifying dream?
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, I have. And just as probably something as People would laugh at it, but and let me clarify, this is not because I was attacked by them or anything, but I had a genuine fear of birds as a kid. Like innocent birds, a blue jay, like anything such as that. Reason being for it, my family's home was they lived on 2 acres. They still are out there. We had like a little woodsy area, so a lot of birds were nearby and everything. It's just I grew up with a lot of cats, and then
Mhm.
like other family members had dogs and things. And when you really look at like an animal's eyes like that, a cat and a dog, and obviously other humans, there's a bit there's more life in the eyes, I'd say. There's more personality being shown. Birds, though, they kind of have just like it almost looks like just a pupil. It's just like the solid color, and there's so much less in it. And for me, as a kid who grew up I've always been like an emotional person, and even as a kid, I was like an empath, and I don't know, I just felt things strongly. So then I see this animal that just looks so, I don't know what other word to say besides soulless. It just these cold eyes. Um, it scared me, and the fact that they could come from anywhere at any time and show up at any time, and like when they would fly overhead, I'd become very uneasy and nervous, and I'd be traumatized. Like when I would, because they would be like up late at night sometimes in the backyard, and I would actually be more relieved when I saw the bats. But for the longest time, just because I couldn't read their eyes, um,
At least
it was
bats
just
are
some,
mammals. At least bats have that
yeah,
going for them. Like,
yeah, just something. And then like the sharp beaks and whatnot. It just like it freaked me out. And I think another part of it too is I remember as a kid, I think it was elementary school, in one of my textbooks, like I had a picture of baby birds when they're like no feathers and they look kind of like aliens.
hmm
I think all those things combined, those factors combined, just terrified me about them. Absolutely terrified me. And thankfully, I'm not so afraid of birds anymore. I'm not comfortable with peacocks, but that is because of an incident. um,
sounds interesting. I was gonna say, birds sound like a reasonable fear. Have you ever angered a bird?
Never, not purposely or anything, but when I was at Busch Gardens at one point, a peacock tried to jump over me. And I don't know if
Oh,
people know, peacocks can't fly. They can like flutter for a little bit, but they can't really fly. So one just wanted the peacocks at Busch Gardens in Tampa Bay, Florida, are not caged. They can just walk around the property. And one just for some reason wanted to jump over me, and like it didn't quite make it. So like its talons or whatever kind of like clawed at me as it was going over me, and that freaked me the hell out. And I just thought I almost got killed by the most colorful creature in the animal kingdom. That would have been terrible.
there's my doom. The most colorful. There
Yes,
we go. Purple and green
at least I
overhead.
saw at least I saw beautiful, vibrant colors before going out.
You did.
Um,
It would have been a colorful way to die.
yeah, so that was my childhood fear. I'd say that I thankfully don't have so much anymore, and that was my encounter with, I guess, angering a bird. Thank you for calling it legitimate though. But with you, same thing with your carpet. The wrinkle there. I get that. My grandparents had like certain furniture that for some reason unsettled me, like china cabinets, for goodness sake. It's just as kids,
Oh
things
yeah,
take a different perspective.
for sure. Like some stuff is just different. There was a grandfather clock as well that was positioned just perfectly to look like the shadow of a human being when you were lying in bed, which was just like perfect. Absolutely fabulous. It looked like
Oh,
an 8 foot tall human, and I was just lying there like, cool, this is how I
that's
die.
that's just like Towel Man. I understand that. That's like Towel Man.
Oh man?
Ta- I was gonna use Towel Man as my childhood reference, but I realized I can't because Towel Man still unsettles me. Um,
Fair.
so Towel Man, for some reason, in every home I've lived in my life, I have a bedroom, and for some reason my bed is I'm not I have a bedroom, but my bed is for some reason situated where when I lay in my bed, I can see out into a hallway, and I can see into the bathroom, like just a little bit. And for some reason, I can always see where the towels hang. And at night, the way the towels hang make it look like a person standing there. My friend Dino and I, when we were kids sleeping over, called him Towel Man because we were terrified of him. And we would try and convince each other to go close the door. Um, and still to this day, I think it looks like a person standing, and I hate it.
I am now very, very glad that I have never fallen asleep facing a towel, and also very curious in like a terrifying way. This is, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Ah.
Yes.
For birds, I have angered birds, so your fear was very reasonable. Rather, my roommate did at the time. You know how smart crows are, correct?
Yes, yes, they hold grudges.
They hold grudges. So if a crow were, say, to misinterpret you saving a baby crow as you trying to injure a baby crow, you know they would never forget this fact.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Hmm. We couldn't go to the grocery store without disguises for 2 months because the birds would dive bomb if we did not look different. It quickly
Alfred
figured
Hitchcock would
out
be so
who lived
happy.
in the house and who was guilty of sins against crows. So your fear sounds very, very reasonable.
Hey, don't wrong the crows. Thank you for the note. I will remember that.
Don't
Because
wrong
I think they
crows,
can
don't
use
wrong peacocks.
I think they can use tools as well, if I remember. Crows actually know how to make tools.
They can, which is very interesting from a what counts as human sentience perspective, if we want to
Yeah.
really get creeped out this fine and fabulous day.
Yeah,
So,
that's a whole nother level. I don't think we're ready for that level of horror.
I don't think so. That's too much. That's too much. I want to go back to like
Uh,
cute octopi if we're doing that. Um,
yeah.
Weirdly enough, like I don't think any of the horror books that like really resonated with me as a kid had anything to do with extraordinarily tall figures standing in doorways or monsters hidden in back rooms. No, wait. Kind of. So the first horror book I remember getting into was Coraline, which is a little of both of those things.
Oh, excellent. Excellent work by Gaiman.
Mm-hmm. The spidery hands, especially. I
Ugh.
half believed that a weird spider hand would come crawling through the house for years after I read it. How about you? What was your first horror book slash movie slash whatever?
Movie, like my first one ever.
Mm-hmm. Or like the
Um,
first one you remember being important?
Having an impact on me. Um, Again, I told you my mom introduced me to some stuff at too early of an age, I think. The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. The
What?
film.
All right, you started out intense.
Yeah, yeah, it started off very intense. And like as a kid, what was happening with Jack's character, it was just scary seeing creepy man act creepy. But I didn't realize, oh, there's this patriarchal family figure here who's meant to be, I guess the leader of the family, and he is slowly mentally deteriorating. And like as an adult, it's even more scary. But as a kid, I watched that, and I was just afraid of like the twins, that woman in the room in the bathtub, uh,
Oof.
like the hedge maze out there, the music of The Shining. That was my first horror experience in any kind of media, and that yeah, that was like it's funny because that it was terrifying, but it was also unlike those other films I told you, your typical slasher films. The Shining was definitely a psychological horror movie, very largely so, and like I was captivated, and that's what like kept started my interest in horror, but at the same time it gave me terrible, terrible, terrible nightmares. Um, but yeah, it was The Shining for sure, and then my first introduction to horror literature was like a lot of young kids, scary stories tell in the dark,
I
and those
forgot
wonderful
about those.
illustrations.
Oh my gosh. Those were good though. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
those
those
are
are
still
A
good.
plus. Yeah, yeah. So that was my first foray into horror. Obviously, my real life experience, my movie experience. When if your real life, what about you? Media, literature, any kind of. What was your first one?
Um, Coraline probably still was
It
the
was
first
Coraline.
for the
Okay.
book, as far as I can remember, and I do think that The Exorcist was the first movie that I ended up watching, which I figured out why I was scared of it years later, and it had nothing to do with the girl spinning around and throwing up. So The Exorcist is fascinating. You probably already know this because you're a horror fan, but you know what sound they put into The Exorcist to make it scary to people, right?
Oh, you know what? I heard about this. I know about the subliminal imagery, but I can't remember the sound. What is
It's
that?
bees. They put in bees.
Oh,
And the only thing that terrifies me as an adult that's terrified me as a kid as well, I am not scared of clocks at doorways. I am not scared of wrinkles in carpets. But the fear I've kept from childhood to adulthood is bees. If I hear a buzz anywhere near me, I am ducking and covering, and it is ridiculous. And there's not even a good reason to be afraid of bees. They're chill. Like they're not
well,
even wasps. They're not going to attack you. There are no murder bees in the United States. They're murder hornets. I was not scared of the hornets. I was scared specifically of the bees.
can I, so that is interesting. You threw me off the minute you said that it's specifically bees. But I will say something here. I wouldn't be surprised if it's in your genetic coding.
Really?
Like I've always believed that it's in our DNA, certain things we're afraid of, whether maybe it wasn't necessarily something that we had a bad experience with, but that our ancestors did. And it's just so deeply embedded in our DNA that we know to be afraid of something. And the reason I just say that is just like looking at like my dog, for example, Jill, and any animal on how they can react poorly to things that they've never had an experience with. Like you've had this animal your whole life, you know it. Jill, I can tell you for a absolute fact of the matter, has never had a bad experience with anything resembling or directly a skateboard or a bee. She is terrified of both of those things. Um, and I think it's something in her coding. Maybe it happened to her parents or somewhere in that genetic line. And I think it sticks with you, and your body just thinks, huh, this hurt my lineage at one point. I should get away from this so I can continue my lineage. Because whether people want to have kids or not, I think there is a natural human instinct to want to create life and continue your bloodline. Um, I think that's a natural living organism thing in there that some people feel strong than others. But the need to survive is something that goes on. So I think when these things scare you, that's you just saying,
Caveman brains like, run, we have to survive this somehow.
yeah, this bad for species. So even if like a bee's never done anything terribly, maybe just that sound is something that
Yeah, and it was
has
the
hurt you.
sound. So like wasps as well make the same sound.
Yeah,
So yeah, same principle. Maybe, who knows? Maybe someone was very allergic to bees at one point.
all right. Now
Maybe a
that's
bee killed my father.
okay. I'm not gonna quote something I thought of because it's inappropriate, but I love that. Um, Lord. um, so we talked past. Now,
How
how
about
about
present?
now? Yeah, tell me this. What do you, with horror? Let's go to you first this time. What's something, either a film, series, a book? What's something that's terrified you now? That's a form of media, and then tell me something that scared you in real life.
Yes. So you've got the bees for real life, but I've got something else for real life too, so it's
So
cool.
still bees, okay? Yeah,
Still
right,
bees,
okay.
still bees. The bees never go away. I must suffer. And I'm chill with them as long as they're not in my face. But for horror things, I did watch Haunting of Hill House. I am very excited to watch Haunting of Bly Manor. And Haunting of Hill House is interesting because the book is cited by a lot of horror authors as one of the scariest horror books that they use as their inspiration. And I didn't think it was a big thing. And then I watched it and it was fascinating to watch. And there is a clock in Haunting of Hill House. And I was like, hey, it's a
Yeah, there
clock.
is.
It's a giant creepy clock at a doorway. So that is in that film. But also, there's definitely that idea of just the whole thing being predicated on this giant miscommunication, right? Have you seen
Yep,
Haunting of
yep.
Hill House?
Oh, I am a massive fan of it.
You're a
Yes.
massive fan. Okay, so there is that. And it was fantastic because while I was watching the spooky ghost scenes, I don't know anything about spooky ghosts, right? Like, I have never had a personal interaction with a spooky ghost, but I know people who have. So I was watching, and there were spooky ghosts, and then there was a knock at the door behind me, and my
Oh
soul left
no.
my body, and I saw, and I was like, cool, I almost died. And I opened the door, and it was someone in there like, are you registered to vote? And I'm like, thank you. I almost died. I am. So,
Just to confirm.
just to confirm, I am. Thank you so very much for your time. Yes, so that is that, and then I guess some places are scary, just inherently. And it's
Yeah.
interesting because I feel like some people have better senses of that than other people. I am generally pretty bad at sensing spooky vibes any place that I happen to go. But that doesn't mean it doesn't freak me out. It may be like, even though lizard brain is not screaming at me to run away, logic brain is like, cool, if I ever go into a place that is haunted, I will not know. So I better hope that one of my friends who's good at picking up on those things knows, or else I am toast. How about you?
Yeah. So I'll start with real life first and then go to the film series. Real life, and this is something that actually got getting excited as a kid, but now it scares me.
Mm-hmm.
And living out in Colorado even more so because there's much faster land animals to worry about that make sound. But I am terrified of the sound of snapping twigs and anything like that in a mountain hike. And I think this is actually pretty relevant because there was just recently a video that came live on social media of a fella being chased away by a mountain lion, a mama mountain lion that was
Oh,
very angry at him.
geez.
Yeah, it's a very, very tense video to watch. A lot of people have seen it now. But when I was a kid and I heard sounds like walking in the woods and stuff, I got excited. I was like, oh, what is it? And in the woods in Florida, you're never going to get anything that big. Not in the part I lived in. You would have to go to a river or something to get something that could hurt you, really. But out here in Colorado, in the mountains, there's animals that are respectfully sized and respectfully lethal. So now, like, when I hear that, like, I don't get in a panic mode or anything, but I become much more nervous and just kind of aware. And a part of that reason is too is I am a big animal lover, and I hate the concept that if something was to attack me, that I would have to fight for my life, and I would most likely have to injure it severely. And if I don't have, to be frank, if I don't have the bloodlust to hurt something, I'm not going to be able to hurt it as much, and I feel like that would make my defenses poor. I would hope that my adrenaline and will to survive would kick in, but just like hearing that those kind of things freak me out in real life now as an adult. Um, when otherwise I would have been excited, like, oh, an animal, I want a pet, and now it's, oh, an animal, please stay away. Um, you know, but the as a film now or a piece of media, I'm gonna actually say the work of Ari Aster in general, which would be Hereditary and Midsummer.
Oh, oh,
Um,
dang. Okay, yes.
yeah, huge fan of both of those films that focused on one was focused on a family dynamic, one on like a romantic relationship dynamic, and the tension that can arise from those, and having a dysfunction like a dysfunctional family that most people could relate to. And then just how foreboding and how these horrible things keep happening. Midsummer was a completely different ball game because it was bright and daylight the whole film, and they're in Sweden here and they have all this like lovely visuals, and underneath it though you have this like terrible relationship horror film, um, and it's just so like I've seen couples like this that have this kind of dysfunctional, terrible, malicious relationship, and it's just like uncomfortable to watch, but compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Hereditary was just plain old scary, just period. They just had moments that were just very. You don't forget them. You have these innocent people just trying to live their lives, but this evil presence is just not letting them be, and there's nothing they can do about it, and it's just kind of overbearing. So, those are favorites of recently.
Oof.
Yeah,
Those
Haunting
sound
of Hill House though was
excellent.
excellent.
Yes.
I just have to give a shout out to one moment in Haunting of Hill House when the sister describes how she felt when she put her hand on her sister and what she, I guess
When
you
she
could
felt
say, didn't
nothing.
see and didn't feel.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, oh, that's heavy. Like that's as
That
heavy as
was
it gets, and
heavy.
like how that, yeah. Like again, that's a psychological, emotional thing. It's not just because something came out and spooked you. It's like, oh, that is like emotionally scary. Um, and on that note, that's where I want to see horror go in the future. We talk past, present. For the future, I want to see horror go in that direction. I'm tired of jump scares. I'm tired of boo. Like that's cheap. That's not, you didn't earn that scare. You just startled me. I want to
Mm-hmm.
see more works like Haunting of Hill House where the horror isn't the focus. I want the focus to be a good story. Give me a good story that can scare me, but don't make your main goal to scare me. Make your goal to compel me. What do you think? Where would you like to see
I think
horror
I
go next?
agree. I think I agree with that. That I want something scary and compelling. And I'm actually going to tie it into the franchises I've said I've enjoyed already. So I said that I enjoyed the story of the haunted carnival, where you had to face your own worst fears and worst qualities, and Haunting of Hill House. The thing that gets me most, Theo got me hard, of course, because
Oh
the
yeah.
the empath, just in general, the touching and not feeling anything. I think what got me more though, what was more horrific, was Luke and his inability to save the sister who he knew perhaps better than anyone. So I
Oh
think
yeah.
probably if you're going to play with horror, the worst person everyone knows is themselves. And that's where
Yep.
I want to see horror go. Is like the scariest thing in the world is a mirror. So give me that. And like then give me a bunch of blankets and pillows cuz I'm going to want to hide.
Yeah, wow, Elizabeth, that is extremely profound. Um, it's true though. It's true. Most of our greatest fears come from insecurities and perspectives of ourselves. And Yeah, I would like to see more films deal with that. And also, you know what? On that note, mental illness and things that can come with that. There's a great horror film out there called They Look Like People.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole film, you're legitimately wondering, is what this person's seeing actually happening? Or are they having a mental breakdown and dealing with some serious concerns that they need to be addressed? And the whole film, I won't spoil anything, you're going back and forth. It's like, well, maybe it's real, maybe it's this. And they tell it in a very respectful manner where it's just like, oh, you kind of are hoping that it is really happening, because if it's not, because if something's really happening, boom, you have an explanation, you can take care of it, or you can attempt to take care of it, you can run from the thing, all that. When it's inside of you, you can't run from that. You have
No
to
dice.
face it every single day. So yeah, I agree with you. I think that's where horror should go, and if it does, I think I think we'll get more fans of horror.
That'd be interesting. That'd be way
Yeah.
cool. All right. Thank you for talking with me about horror today, and thank you all for tuning in to the Aurora Library Fantastic Horror Show. And let us know, please, what horror you like, what horror you hate, what horror you want to see more of, and what weird things scare you. Have you ever been attacked by a bird?
Yes. Is there maybe a little lump on that carpet of yours that's just looking at you funny? You don't trust it.
Exactly. Let us know. Thanks for talking, Mr. Brandon.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the people watching. I hope you all stay well and enjoy our spooky offerings that will be coming from Aurora Public Library, all for the month of October.
Absolutely. Bye, everyone.
Bye.